President Biden is visiting two swing states this Labor Day as the midterm elections loom. Let's take a live look at Milwaukee, where the president will deliver a speech at a Labor Day celebration. That's scheduled to start in a few minutes. We're going to take you there when he begins later. The president will return to Pennsylvania. He gave a fiery speech last week in Philadelphia, where he warned so-called MAGA Republicans are threatening democracy. CBS News reporter Sarah Ewall-Wice is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with what we can expect to hear from the president today. Hey there, Sarah. So what is his message at these stops?
Yes, so we are here for Labor Day specifically. So we expect there to be a message specifically about workers. You can expect the president to tout some of the achievements of the administration, some of the successes in passing legislation that create jobs, maybe perhaps the American Rescue Plan, also talking about the CHIPS and Science bill, the bipartisan infrastructure law, and then, of course, the Inflation Reduction Act. All of these different pieces of legislation the president has said will be job creators. And, you know, we're talking about this in a time where there have been some serious economic challenges, of course, inflation being the top of that list. But it is still a very strong labor market. There have been millions of jobs created in this administration. So expect him to get into some of that while also still acknowledging the struggles that workers are still having. Keep in mind, President Biden talks about being the most pro-union president ever. That is something his administration likes to tout. When he announced he was running for office, his first rally he held was actually in Pittsburgh with union workers as well. So this goes back to the campaign trail. Of course, we're in an environment where unions have strong support. The latest Gallup poll showed that unions have approval of 71%. That's the highest since 1965. And about 40% of union members say their membership is very important to them. Of course, the president keeping an eye on that when he talks about being pro-union.
Many legislative successes to talk about, absolutely, Sarah. But given that the midterms, they're here a little more than 2 months away, what do you think that the wider goal of President stops are today?
You know, it's no surprise that he's stopping in two major battleground states, first going to Wisconsin and then coming here to Pennsylvania. Keep in mind there are some very serious races for the midterms in both of these two states, states that President Biden won in the 2020 election. Up in Wisconsin, Democrats are hoping to flip the Senate seat held by Republican Ron Johnson. They have Mandela Barnes running for that seat on the Democratic ticket. So that is one race that's getting a lot of attention right now. Here in Pennsylvania, two major races also getting attention are the race for governor, as well as another Senate race with Republican Senator Pat Toomey retiring. For governor, we have Attorney General Josh Shapiro, the Democrat, running against State Senator Doug Mastriano. For the Senate race, we have Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman running against Dr. Mehmet Oz. So those are two states, of course, the president hitting today that are both battleground states. We expect him to continue visiting states where there are key races throughout the rest of the year, the rest of this cycle, as we are less than 65 days away from the election.
Going to be a busy 65 days, Sarah. And so, you know, the approval numbers are getting a little bit better for President Biden, but they're still not great. Do Democratic candidates really want him hitting the campaign trail on their behalf?
You know, it's interesting. Over the summer, his approval was pretty low, and we had a lot of different candidates saying they were having scheduling conflicts as the president was coming through. As his approval numbers start to tick up, we've seen more candidates embracing his visits. Of course, when he said he was coming to Pittsburgh, both the candidate for Governor Shapiro as well as John Fetterman welcomed his visits. Their campaigns welcomed the visit by the president. According to CBS News polling, his approval ticked up from July to August to 45%. Still low, but on the upward, which is something that Democrats are happy about as they head into the midterms.
Can't forget that speech the other night, right? Certainly being called a fiery speech, right? So how have Democrats and Republicans responded to the president's speech last week in which he warned of the danger posed by former President Trump and some of his supporters, Sarah?
You know, if you're talking to Democrats, you're talking to Republicans, they're taking two very different approaches to this. Republicans extremely upset by the speech, calling it the most divisive ever, talking about the optics of it, saying that the president attacked half of Americans. Keep in mind, President Biden did respond saying he's not going after all Republicans. He was specifically trying to call out what he calls MAGA Republicans. Democrats, on the other hand, some of them talking about how this was a strong speech that was in support of democracy, something that they say is being threatened, and praising it to that end. Of course, this does come as there's been some optics questions about having Marines standing behind him during a primetime address as president.
I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more about that speech as the weeks go by. Sarah Ewall-Wice, thank you so much.